Most people are afraid of losing everything, but there are some people who lost everything and discovered that everything was never really what they thought it was, that the fire that took what they had built did not take what they were made of, that the ground they fell to was not the end of the story. It was the foundation of the next one. This is the story of a man named Thomas, and what he found in the ashes of everything he had lost. Stay with me. Thomas had spent 15 years building something, not a grand empire, not the kind of thing that makes newspaper headlines or fills large rooms with applause, just a modest timber business in a small town, a yard full of good wood, a reputation built carefully over years of honest work, 3 employees who trusted him, and a family who depended on what he had built. It was not everything to the world, but it was everything to him, and then in one season, it was gone. A fire took the yard, an uninsured fire, the kind of catastrophic combination of circumstances that people say cannot happen until it does. The wood was gone, the equipment was gone, the savings he had put back into the business rather than into protection were gone. The 3 employees he could no longer pay were gone within the month. He was 41 years old, and he was starting from nothing. There is a parable about a tree in a storm. The storm does not distinguish between strong trees and weak ones when it arrives. It bends everything. It strips everything. It takes what is not rooted deeply enough and lays it flat on the ground. But here is what the storm cannot do. It cannot take the roots. The roots go deeper than the storm reaches, and the tree that bends to the ground in the storm and does not break is not a destroyed tree, it is a tested one, and tested trees, when the storm passes, stand differently than they stood before. They stand with the knowledge of what they survived. Thomas was bent to the ground, but his roots held. He did not know that yet on the morning he sat in the empty yard and looked at the ashes of 15 years, but he would. Thomas sat in those ashes for 3 days, not literally. He went home each evening. He ate. He slept because his body demanded it, even when his mind refused to rest. But in every way that mattered, he sat in those ashes for 3 days. And on the 3rd day, something shifted. Not dramatically, not in a blinding moment of inspiration that he would one day describe in a speech to a large room of people. Just quietly, a small thought that arrived the way small thoughts sometimes arrive when the noise of a person's normal life has been stripped away and there is nothing left to distract from the truth. The thought was this: I still know how to work with wood. That was it. Nothing grand, nothing inspiring, just a simple inventory of what the fire had not taken. It had taken the yard, it had taken the equipment, it had taken the savings and the employees and the business name and 15 years of accumulated physical assets, but it had not taken his hands. It had not taken the knowledge in those hands that 15 years of daily work had built into them. It had not taken the relationships he had built with suppliers who trusted him. It had not taken the reputation for quality and honesty that he had carried into every transaction for 15 years. Here is a truth that most people only discover in the fire. What you have built into yourself cannot be burned. The assets can go. The money can go. The business, the position, the title, the structure, all of it can go in a single night. But the character that was built in the years of building them, the discipline, the knowledge, the relationships, the integrity. None of that burns. None of that can be taken by a fire or a recession or a betrayal or a bad season. It stays. And a person who understands that they still have what cannot be taken is not a person who has lost everything. They are a person who has lost everything except the most important things. Thomas understood this on the third day, and he stood up. Thomas did not rebuild the way he had built the first time. The first time he had built with the urgency of a young man trying to prove something, fast, driven by the need to show the world and himself that he could do it. The kind of building that produces impressive results quickly and sometimes skips the foundations in the rush to reach the visible parts. The second time he built differently. He built slowly, deliberately, with the particular patience of a man who has already seen what happens when the storm comes and the foundations are not deep enough. He started with one tool and a small rented space. He took one small job repairing a neighbor's fence, then another, then a small furniture repair, then a referral from the furniture repair to someone who needed custom shelving. Each job small, each job done with the full weight of everything he knew and everything he had learned and everything the fire had taught him. There's a parable about a man who built a wall. His apprentice looked at him one morning, laying the bricks carefully and one by one, and said, "You are building this too slowly. At this rate it will take years." The old builder looked at him and said, "I am not building a wall. I am building a wall that will still be standing when neither of us is here to see it. That requires a different pace." Thomas built at that pace, not because he was not hungry. He was. Not because he did not want it back quickly. He did, but because he had learned something in the ashes that he had not known in the 15 years before them. Speed builds impressively. Patience builds permanently, and permanent was what he was building this time. 3 years after the fire, Thomas had a small workshop. 5 years after the fire, the workshop had expanded and had 2 employees. 7 years after the fire, the business was larger than the one that had burned, not just in size, in depth, in the quality of the relationships, in the systems that meant one bad season could not take everything, in the foundations that went deeper than any storm had yet reached. He had not just rebuilt what he lost, he had built what the first version never was. Thomas lost everything and rebuilt something better, not because he was special, not because he had resources that other people do not have, but because he understood something in the ashes that most people only discover when they have been forced to sit in them long enough. Here is the first truth I want to leave with you today. What you have built into yourself cannot be burned. The assets can go, the money can go, the position, the title, the structure, all of it can disappear in a single night, but the character that was built in the years of working for them cannot be taken. The discipline, the knowledge, the relationships, the integrity. When everything external is gone, what remains is the most honest inventory of who you actually are. And if you have been building the right things on the inside, then losing everything on the outside is not the end. It is a reset. And a reset with 15 years of internal building is not the same as starting from nothing. It is starting from experience, starting from wisdom, starting from knowing exactly what you will and will not do differently this time. The second truth is this: the storm does not take the roots, Every person who has ever lost something significant has had a moment in the ashes where they sat with the question of whether anything survived. And the answer is always yes. Not the things you could see, but the things that grew underground in the years of faithful work, the roots, the character, the knowledge, the people who know who you actually are. These do not burn. And a person who still has their roots still has everything they need to grow again. The tree bent to the ground in the storm is not a dead tree. It is a tested one, and tested trees stand differently. The third truth is this: speed builds impressively, patience builds permanently. Thomas built the first time with the urgency of someone who needed to prove something. He built the second time with the patience of someone who needed to build something that would last. These are two completely different motivations, and they produce two completely different results. The first produces something visible quickly. The second produces something that stands after the storms come. Ask yourself honestly which one you are building with right now. Because if everything you are building is designed to impress in the short term, you may be skipping the foundations that will matter in the long term. And the storm always comes eventually. Build for the storm, not for the spectator. The fourth truth is this: falling is not failing. Thomas fell completely. He sat in ashes. He started over with one tool in a rented space, taking one fence repair at a time. And that beginning was not a small beginning. It was the most significant beginning of his life, because it was built on the only foundation that actually holds, the foundation of a person who has been through the fire and knows what they are made of. Most people are afraid to fall because they believe falling is the end. But falling is only the end if you decide not to get up. And the decision to get up, made quietly, without an audience, in the ashes of what used to be, is one of the most powerful decisions a human being can make. And the fifth truth, the one that Thomas discovered on the third day, sitting in the ashes of 15 years, is the one I want to leave you with today. Take stock of what the fire did not take, not what is gone, what remains. Because what remains after everything has been stripped away is the truest inventory of who you are. And who you are is always more than enough to begin again. Get up, start small, build deep, and trust that the roots you grew in the years before the storm are exactly what you need for the season after it.